Hey everybody, today I'm taking a look at Leaf, which is a 1 to 4 player board game that takes 30 to 45 minutes to play. This one is designed by Tim Eisner and published by Weird City Games. Now before I get started on my review of Leaf, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so once set up, Leaf is going to look something like this, where you'll have a number of different boards, the first of which is this board here that holds these animal cards, which you are trying to collect throughout the game for set collection bonuses. At the top of that board, you have this sun track, which is this kind of game end counter. But once you get past the winter mark, by cashing in sun tokens, it will trigger the end of the game. And depending on the player count, you're going to use a different side of the board or even start on different spots. There you have a leaf board which holds the different leaves that you'll be placing throughout the game, as well as the leaf cards associated to those. You have this tree board here where each person will put their little starting squirrel at the start marker. And throughout the game, you'll be trying to climb the track, getting bonuses as you go. And if you end the game highest on the track, you'll get some bonus points. And second place will also get some secondary points as well. You're going to start with 2 of the starting leaves in the following formation, just to give you a little starting spot to build from. Each player is going to have their little player board with the little turn overview, as well as that endgame scoring summary there, as well as some starting cards. Now, there are also some additional components, such as the sun tokens, the acorn tokens, which are your point tokens, as well as your personal mushroom tokens, which you'll be deploying on those central leaf tokens. The turn structure of this game is actually very simple, where all you'll do on your turn is you'll select one of your leaf cards. So in this example, I have this tulip poplar that I will discard, and I'll take the next matching leaf of that type and place it onto that central display of leaves, and take corresponding actions as to where I place or where I match these leaf points, or the kind of pinnacles of these leaves. So for example, I could do something like this. And because I touch at this point here and this point here, I'll get those corresponding actions. So I'd get to draw a leaf card and take an animal card. But you can be quite creative, or try to be as optimize these as much as possible by maybe doing something, let's say like this. Now I'm touching at multiple points, so I'm touching here, 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 and here, and get multiples of those actions. So in this example, I would get 2 leaf actions because I'm touching on 2 points, as well as 2 animal actions. Now, optionally, if you discard 2 matching cards, again, you always have to play at least 1, but if you do 2 matching, you can instantly place one of your small mushroom tokens on the tile that you've just placed. So I could do something like this, which is important for subsequent turns, as you will soon find out. Now at this point, if you have 3 or more of these sun tokens, you can choose to cash them in order to progress the round token like this and get this many corresponding acorns. And when the game progresses, it will look something like this, but let's talk about some more of those actions. So we've already touched on the leaf symbol here, and when you touch those points, you will get to draw the leaf cards to refill your hand and increase your options. If you ever get to a point where you don't have any leaf cards in your hand and you're forced to play with nothing there, you will take some negative points, these 3 negative points, and draw 2 new cards from the deck. We've talked about the animal cards, and when you take the animal cards, you're going to take a look at the display and draw them like so. So if I had 2, I would take these 2 cards, which relate to the scoring track here. If you remember, when you cash in those sun tokens, when you cross these thresholds, you'll get to bank 1 animal type and secure those as victory points, and they will score you points based on this sliding scale. Well, you can see here in your winter den, if you have 1 card, it'll be 1 point, 2 cards, 3 points, 3 cards, 6 points, and for every card beyond that will be 1 additional point for that particular animal type. You have the sun token here, and when you touch those, you'll simply get to take one of those suns from the supply. And if you remember, you cash those in order to progress that track. You have the tree action, which allows you to climb the tree, and for every point you touch, you'll climb up these and get additional suns or additional animal cards, additional acorns, leaf cards, etc. And if you remember, if you're the highest up there, you'll get some additional points at the end of the game. And I suppose the most involved action is the mushroom action. And when you take that mushroom action by touching those points, you'll get to deploy these mushrooms onto the board. And when you deploy them first, they'll have to go on the little side up. But for additional action points, you can choose to flip them over. Now, these are important not only because you're going to score points based on the networks you have on the board at the end of the game. So you can see here I've got two large mushrooms next to each other. Much like the animal cards, you're going to score these based on a sliding scale, but they're going to be worth slightly more points. But more importantly, in future turns, if people wanted to, say, take an action, let's just say a player wanted to go here like so, because the leaf they're touching has one of my mushrooms on, and I've got either the biggest or equal biggest mushroom on there, then I will get a sun token. So that's another way to get some passive income in terms of those sun tokens. And that is essentially how the game works. You're going to keep on taking actions until somebody triggers the end of the round by crossing that winter threshold, or until 3 of the stacks of leaves have been depleted. You're going to have one last chance to bank an animal type, and then you're going to work out who has the most points based on and who's climbed the highest up the tree, the mushroom networks, the animal card points, as well as getting an additional point for every pair of either leaf cards or sun tokens left. And the player with the most acorns at the end of the game will be the winner. Okay, so let's share some thoughts on leaf, and I think we should start with the kind of key mechanism of the game, which is this leaf placement mechanism where you're touching the tips of the different leaves to get the actions. This is undeniably fun, and it's very satisfying the way they all kind of slot into each other and trying to maximize those placements. But not only is it like a actual fun thing to try and place onto the board, there is actually some decision space behind your placement here, because what you have to consider is that when you place these leaves, you're not actually getting the action of the leaf that you place, but only the ones that you touch, meaning that the subsequent players to follow you, you are creating opportunities for, because if there's a big drought of leaf cards, for example, and you've got plenty, and then you place your leaf card in a position where there's tons of the different kind of tips pointing out there, ready for the other players to latch onto, that might not be such an optimal decision to make. So again, I love the way it all just fits together, it slots together, it looks cool on the table, and it's just a very nice, satisfying mechanism. And on top of that, when you add on the mushroom deployments, as I said, if there's a particular action that's running dry and that you know the other players want, if by deploying your mushrooms on there, you are going to get some passive income when players start latching onto it by gathering those suns, which of course will get you a nice little injection of acorns when it comes to your turn and you cash them in. So a nice little touch of some passive interaction there, again, by strategically placing those mushrooms on the most lucrative spots on the board. I think this game is a very fun game to teach to new players because they're going to love and latch on to this part of the game. And each individual part of the game, all the different coloured actions are very simple in their own right. Simple set collection, climb the tree, place some mushrooms on the board, draw some new cards. This is all very simple gateway stuff there. And that's probably where I start getting kind of maybe losing interest in this one, because I think it might be a little bit too simple for me. I would love to have seen this central mechanism be linked to slightly more involved mini games, if you want to put it that way. Maybe a little area control game, a bit more cross-contamination or synergies between each of the moving parts of this one, because again, in their own right, it's all super simple stuff. Place a mushroom on the board, draw some cards, etc. So definitely is tailored to more of a gateway market, and I think if you've played a lot of games, this one is going to have a shelf life. I think the meaningful decisions in this game are limited. As I mentioned before, you can try to gamify it through more tactical placement to try and restrict your opponent's next placement. But even then, I think you are reaching to find that strategy or find that gaminess of it. You know, all in all, if you take the animal action, you're going to try and collect the same animal types. It's not rocket science. Just try and collect the most types as you can. And when you reach that 3, you might want to start reaching for the next one, because the efficiency is a lot better. Up to those 3 cards, and beyond that the return isn't so great. But I suppose I do like the fact that you can only bank 1 animal type, so sometimes you can tactically try to push it beyond the threshold and catch your opponents off guard, so that they have to bank something when they're not quite prepared to, and therefore they might have to waste their whole next turn bolstering that animal type rather than starting a fresh one. So again, a very small touch there, but still it's very simple stuff. Climbing the tree, nothing to it, just try and get as far up on it as you can. You always want a fresh hand of cards so that you can fit them in the most optimal spaces. So yeah, I mean, and even for me, the mushroom placement, I'm always mostly leaning towards the networks, because 8 points for 3 mushrooms is quite nice. You have to bear in mind that spreading your kind of your coverage a bit thinner on the board might benefit you by placing it on leaves that other people are going to use. Therefore, you're going to get that passive income through those suns. Or are you going to keep on trying to spam in the same area so that you get that chain of those fully grown mushrooms and get points that way instead? So I think all in all, it's quite a well-balanced game where everything feels as lucrative as the next part. But it all feels like, the central mechanism is cool, and the rest of it is almost like tacked on, tried and tested mechanisms that have been done to kind of nauseam, really. The player interaction in the game is fine. You are, again, cutting people off at times by using the spots that they were looking to use. You have got that mushroom thing going on, the competition to climb the tree. Perhaps you're trying to go for the same animal as your opponent. Very standard stuff there. In terms of the scalability, I think the game does actually improve when you get to that 3 or 4 player mark. I have played it at 2. I found it a little bit too loose, especially when it came to collecting the sets of animals, because it seems like you get way too many animals too easily, and you just have surplus of animals ready to be banked when you only have a few opportunities to actually bank them. So yeah, when it came to 3 players, it was a bit more difficult to get everything done, or everything you wanted done. And that being said, I do think the game is played in a nice, succinct amount of time. It does not outstay its welcome. You are looking at around 40 minutes to play this with, 3 or 4 players, which is nice. Anything beyond that, I think it would start outstaying its welcome. So it knows what it's going for here. The production for this game is fantastic. As you can see, it looks wonderful on the table, and once all the leaves are deployed, it looks fantastic. The card quality is decent. The tokens are all good. All the artwork is nice. It has quite a distinct visual appeal to this one. The game does come with all these kind of boxes that you can put your stuff in, and just slips right into the main box, which is a nice little touch, and a great value for money game in my opinion. Okay, so let's share some final thoughts on Leaf, and this is a difficult game for me to comment on because I really wanted to love this one, and I think it's fine for the right audience. So this is certainly a gateway game, and sometimes it's hard for me to maybe objectively look at a game of this simplicity, because I play so many and I want more involved games personally. This central puzzle is fantastic, and I would love to see a more involved game built around this. This is amazing, great. If you had something with the complexity of, say, Trajan with all those mini games, but you're using those actions through this mechanism, sign me up. I'm all in on that. But for me, these actions are just too basic. There's nothing interesting going on here. And that being tied hand in hand with the uniqueness and just the innovativeness of this, for me, is a crying shame, because I just want to see more of this and not so much of this. But all in all, when I've played this with other gamers, they've enjoyed it. Especially, when I played it with my girlfriend, she really enjoyed it because she's really an intro into gaming, and she thought this was really novel and fun. So again, take my opinion with a grain of salt, because I like heavier Euros. This one isn't that style of game. So I think if you're looking for a gateway game to get, again, friends or maybe younger family members into board gaming, and you want that hook to keep them interested, this is going to do that. So full props to that. It's beyond a gimmick. It's, it's not a gimmick at all. It's actually a really cool mechanism, and the way they slot together is quite fascinating. Again, great value for money, great table presence, really colourful, and yeah, it moves at a brisk pace. And it is what it is, and it does what it does extremely well. But it's not the style of game that I'm personally looking for in my collection at this time. So I can respect it. I like it. But it could have been so much more if they Eurified it and made, again, a heavier game built around this fantastic central leaf mechanism. So that is my final thoughts on Leaf.